Today's topic is
the ultimate assembly guide.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to WAYPN. I'm Cal.
And I'm Sunny.
We're going to be covering washing, cutting, cleaning, and assembling your models.
And if you're a first timer doing this video is going to be great for you. If you've done this before, we hope it's a good refresher. So now, on with the video.
Here we've got our 4 model kits. First off, we've got the Citadel polyplastic, then we've got resin, then we've got fine cast, which is slightly different, but we're pretty much going to treat it the same, and then metal. All right, let's start with the plastic. So first off, what we're going to do is we're going to take it out of its box, make sure that all of the contents are there. All right, so we've got some bases, we've got some instructions. We take a look. Everything looks good. So obviously this is sped up because we have inspected these things already. Next, what we're going to do is go over here. We're just going to give them a quick spray with some watered down detergent and simple green to get the grease off each of these. And then we're going to get a brush, and you can be a bit more aggressive with the GW stuff. Just scrub it. We're going to dip it. Then we're going to put it over here. Rinse and repeat. And then we're going to put some water over those to get rid of the detergent and so on. Now just get some warm water, pour it over them. There we go. That's it. Now we're going to move on to our fine cast model. Now the first thing is, since it's in a clamshell and it's not easily opened, I'm going to have to get some scissors, cut it out of there. Because he's so small, we're worried about stuff falling off in the sink because he's also resin. So we've got a handy dandy solution. All right? Just a Tupperware container. Next, we're going to do the exact same things. We're going to spray him with our chemicals to get the mold release off. And then we're going to be a lot more gentle with him because resin can be quite reactive. So here we go. We've just got a toothbrush. There we go. Nice and gentle. Very, very gentle around fingers. Here we go. Nice and gentle. Very, very gentle around fingers. And then we do the exact same thing as before. Just pour some hot water over it. Or rather, I should say warm water to get the chemicals off. Now what we're going to do, another takeaway container and some paper towel. We're just going to dry them off in there. Okay, we've just got 2 left. We've got the 2 Bushido boxes. So let's take a look. Alright, it looks like they come in little packets together. I was expecting sprues, but this is okay. You're going to have things like this happen. So here's what we're going to do. Instead of having one big box, we're going to use little boxes, or rather sauce containers, to make sure that they're all together. We're going to do the exact same thing as before, but just put them in these. Okay, and first thing is, there'll be mistakes. So, before with the sauce containers, they wouldn't fit. So now, we're jumping up to these smaller containers. And it's going to be the exact same story as before. We're going to use this to spray them, the warm water, the whole trick. But the most important thing is gentle, gentle. Okay, here we go. Alright. And I'm extra gentle around this bow thing, because it's likely to break. Now we do the exact same thing with the water as before. Okay, and oh no, our water's filled up too much, so we're just going to drain that in the sink. But in the meantime, get some paper towel, put it into this, and we put our guy along with it. The most important thing is not to separate the packets in case they've got some relevance. All right, and we're going to go through all of these. Okay guys, here's a good example of why you actually do it. So look at this water down here, right? And see how it just moves about normally. But you take a look at these other bits of water, right? And you might notice that they're hydrophobic, the models. That's because of the grease on them, and that's why you want to do this. I know that the camera's having a hard time focusing, but that's what you can see. And so we're probably going to have to clean these twice. Finally, we've got the metal models. Now, when it comes to them, they're not going to be covered in a release agent, but they might have some powder on them. And this isn't going to hurt. All right, so we're going to take them over, give them a bit of a scrub, and then I've just made this doohickey, but anyone can make it, and you just put some mesh in the bottom of something and just lay it in there. And there we go. He's there along with the others. Now that it's all cleaned up, the next thing you want to do is cut it out. Now, with certain areas you can be a bit more cavalier and you can clip quite cleanly and easily. But in other areas you want to give some space because you don't want to lose details. So we're going to cut with some fair distance. And the reason that we're doing this is that we want to make sure that all of our details remain intact. So we cut him out. We're going to cut these fingers out and then we're going to clean it up with a knife. Next up, we're going to start cleaning up. So we've got this little bit here. We're going to cut along there. We're going to try and push off some of the times. But some of the times we might have to come back to the clipper. So right here, I'm going to face it away from the model. Just do that. And then after that, I'm going to have to do some cutting and maybe even some filing after this. There we go, let's not get too violent with it. So we're probably going to have to file there. With stuff like this, some of the times your best option is just to use your finger to apply some pressure back and forth to make it loose and then come to cut it. Yeah, we've gotten rid of that bit, but we're probably going to have to do more filing and so on afterwards. Come back to the clipper and we're just cutting off these sections, right? It's going to be a lot looser, and the reason for that is we don't want to lose that detail. So once again, we're cutting off these extraneous bits, and then we're going to get in there with a knife and clean up some of those other details, like over here. Just shave them down, get rid of them. I think that's enough. So it's mostly cleaned up, but now it's time to show you the final part. The final part is a dry fit. We dry fit everything before we glue. And the reason we do that is we need to make sure that things will be right. Okay, do I have to get some green stuff for him, or, some gap filler? Or will he be just fine when I glue him? It looks like he'll be just fine. Looks like there's more flashing to clear up, but we'll work on that in the meantime. So now that she's all clean, we're going to get the fox and we're going to take a look what needs to be removed. So all we see here, take a close look and you'll see a fine mold line. That's going to go along the middle of miniatures. So let's just remove it with a gentle scrape, okay? There we go. That's all you need to do. Alright, we're going to take a look at some other areas and see if that mold line goes anywhere else. Doesn't look like it does, but we've got some flashing in here. So we're just going to do that. And then once we've done that, we're done with this one. But there's something else that you're going to notice. Some of the times you're going to get small bubbles with these resin models. Just get some fill and just put it in there and you'll be right as rain. Okay, so with the metal models, it's the exact same as the plastic. We're going to take a look here and we see some slight mold lines, very slight. We're just going to scrape them like before because these aren't going to be extremely hard metals.
And do you still apply the same amount of pressure as with the plastic ones or harder a bit?
Oh, it's barely anything. And the other thing is that you're going to have to clean up flashing like this, which is very similar to the
Like
resin.
The resin models, yeah.
And then you're going to have little bits like this, like the plastic. And you're going to have to cut them with a knife. And you can see them applying a similar level of pressure. Right? And that's pretty much it. We'll check her for mold lines. She'll probably have them somewhere. Oh, it looks like it's either a mold line or a gap in here somewhere. But that will probably come up during priming. Your sprues are all cleaned up, and the next thing you got to get is this.
This might not be the fun part, but with the older models, it's not as necessary. But with some of the newer sprues...
Yes, so this is the new Nightmare box, and it's got the Night Lords in it, and the Chaos Space Marines aren't that forgiving to assemble. For example, this guy right here, you're not going to have a lot of room to be forgiven with that.
As you can see, everything requires a very specific way and order of assembly, so that's something you need to keep in mind.
Okay, so my client wants one guy like this and one guy like this, but there's 3 models in this kit. So what we're going to do is with this one, we're going to make one of those 2, but with the previous one, there's a unique character that can be made in this. So we're going to make the unique character and the other 2. So now that we know what we're making, we grab our sprue, find our bits. Here and here are the first things that we want to assemble. We're just going to cut them out and then we're going to go from there. All right, now we're going to cut this out. We're going to leave some space in between here and here just in case this would stretch and squish the miniature that I'm cutting out. So here we go, just a bit away. There we go, like that. And again, we're going to be doing that all around. Right, now that we've done that, we take it out. Our next step is to get our knife. Now that we've got our knife, we're just going to get rid of the majority of those burrs. Now, as you can see, I'm actually cutting towards myself because I've got more control this way. All right. Alright, your next step is if you want to do this. You don't necessarily have to do this, but it depends on how high quality you want your miniatures. That is to sand the stuff away. And this is going to take a little while. Now, some people recommend using something like this over here, which is just a nail file, but usually cut up or something like that. This is fine, whatever works for you. Okay, here's another thing some people get very upset about, which is mold lines. Now you can see it along here, and how we're going to get rid of it is by gently scraping it with our knife. So here we go.
Yeah, I can see what you're doing there. It seems like you're just grazing over the top with the slightest amount of pressure.
Yep, almost no pressure at all. Don't be a savage. Don't cut yourself or your model, okay?
Let the knife do the work, as they say.
Yep. All right, your next step is dry fitting. So we just put the pieces of the model together Okay, they fit great. Now look how we've removed the mold line along there, right? We've got some burrs that maybe we want to deal with, but the reason why we want to do that is imagine scraping the knife across there now where there's protrusions from this. That's why we want to do the prep work in separate stages.
So you don't lose the details.
So we've dry fit the mold. Let's take it apart and now let's add some glue. I'm going to be using some Tamiya Extra Thin. Now what you use is up to you, but the biggest thing for me is don't have an excess on it and try to hit the right areas. Now you'll notice that I'm using almost nothing at all, and the reason for that is some of this is going to come spewing out of the sides, and that's not great if we have too much. But if we have very little or the right amount, like hopefully this is, it will come together and stay together forever and look great. So here we go. And here we can see a little bit of that over the sides. But we're encountering one of our first other problems. Take a look right here. Right? That's a gap. The first thing to note with these gaps is you can just leave them if you want. But if you want your models to look a little better, there's two solutions that I know of. Now, one is products like this, Mr. Hobby's Dissolving Putty, and the other one is the free version, something that we have made ourselves and that a lot of people in the community make, Sprue Goo. We're going to show you how to make it right now, but you're going to notice a difference in tone because it's from one of our shorts. We're going to be a little hyperactive. Just get some plastic glue, cut up some sprue and put it in. That will dissolve the plastic and all of a sudden, Sprue Goo.
That's it?
Yep, and you can design it to purpose. So if you want thicker, add more sprue. If you want it thinner, add less sprue. One of the things I did off screen is I made sure to remove the excess. Now I'm going to just put a little on. And now that's gone. But we do have some detail missing. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our regular thin cement, aka just thin glue. And we're just going to make sure that it's spread out nice and even. Okay, so that gap's gone, but we want to leave some of the detail there. Okay, guys?
So is this like thinning your paints but with glue?
Kind of, but this is one of the reasons why people like this over that, because you're going to have less chance of that happening. On the other side, we still have that gap. So what we're going to use is we're going to use the dissolving putty. But here's the big thing. You're going to want a stuffed brush. A brush that is beyond recognition. People will give these to you, okay? But we're going to use this for the dissolving putty. Now we're going to dip in here. And my one's pretty old and a little munted. But what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we get the excess off. And then we're going to paint it into here. Hopefully, if I can try not stuffing it up for once. I'm wiping away the excess with my finger, which is okay. But there's one thing you definitely don't want to do.
What's that?
Lick your brush.
Definitely don't want to be licking acid putty.
Now some of the times you're going to have to wait in between things because you can see that some of it has been filled, but not really. The other solution is to put a lot on here and then to sand it, but I don't like that. So we're just going to fill it a little and then wait.
This kind of feels a lot like filling a gap with grout.
Yeah, it really is. Now it's all filled. Now we do see some remnants of this stuff over here, but that will mostly disappear once you put on your primer. Alright, but if you want to be super clean, you can scrape that off or sand it off. But there we see that that's a bit cleaner than the other side. Let's take a look at the other side. There we are. All our gaps are gone. Okay, now that we've shown you the steps, the next thing to do is to go through the rest of it. But obviously, that would be very boring to watch. So we're going to do the rest off screen. There's one thing that we forgot to add. So when it comes to smaller pieces, and this is only relatively smaller considering it's an Ogren, one of the things that you're going to want to do is hold on to the piece while you're clipping. And the reason for that is if you don't, it's likely to go flying somewhere and you'll never find it again. Okay, and now we have two assembled models. This Nort Deadog and this Ogren.
That doesn't look very assembled to me, Cal.
Okay, so what we're doing is something called sub-assemblies. So you can see here, we've assembled certain parts together, but we've left certain parts separate.
I see.
The reason for that is we're better able to access everything with a paintbrush this way. But there is a next step. So once you get to that stage, what you're going to want to be using is the stuff over here. Now this is what it looks on this. This is a Games Workshop product. I like it, I use it, but you can just use, for example, paper clips and things like that. But I like this for plastic because it will connect and it will be quite easy. Here's an example that I have done earlier. A Space Marine shoulder pad.
And how do you stick it onto something that small of a head?
See, you just stick it on there with some plastic glue.
Right, okay.
Alright, now the thing is these bonds are very strong. They're not going to fall off. Alright, and so I've got my tub of used ones here and I reuse them all the time. Okay, now you don't have to use this product as I said, but that's something that works for me, and maybe it'll work for you. Alright, this is how they should look once you put them on their stands, and now it's all sub-assembled. Now we're going to attach these guys to bases. Now you might notice that these are used bases, and I'm getting a super glue here. And the reason I'm using used bases is because I'm going to paint them not on their base, but separately. And how I do this, we get a bit of scrap plastic. For this, we're just using this here. And you can see, when I just opened this, it started pouring out without me wanting it to.
Yeah, and why do we use a scrap plastic?
So that we can control the amount that we want to put on.
Right.
Now, the Ogrens are very well balanced. So what we do is we're just going to get 1 foot. We're going to roll it around like that. And put it on the base. Now that will, once it's dried, create a very secure hold. But it will be very easy to snap off. So
that you can replace the nice base later on.
Yeah, so that you can put these onto the nicer things later on. Now, some of the times that might not be enough super glue, right? And you'll find out pretty quickly if it is or it isn't. But usually the biggest thing is just waiting for it to dry. And that's your final step in assembly. Okay, so this guy is all assembled. Just like the other guy, you may see that there's some separate bits. But unlike the other guy, this guy has 2 arm parts. But let's take a look. When he's fully assembled, look how much of the body is covered with that. Now, I've got this arm separate here and this arm over here, which we will attach to over here. But the thing is, we keep it off so we can paint all of that without troubles. Now we can see that he's done in sub-assemblies, but that doesn't mean that we didn't glue things. For example, this tail and leg part we glued because there's no reason to have it in a sub-assembly. Whereas this right here, his arms, which are quite detailed, which would block all of this area, we've left separate. Whereas over here, we have fully assembled this model because we are easily able to reach everything everywhere. Okay, we're just about to move on to spray, and you might be wondering why there's blobs of blue tack, and that's so that we'll still have contact points. Once this is all sprayed up and there's paint over it, we'll just be able to glue it back on because it'll be plastic meeting plastic. Because essentially what happens is with plastic glue, what it does is it slightly melts both bits of plastic, making it one whole piece of plastic. So you see we've left him as is, just glued him just by himself. But you'll note on each of these pieces, we've glued at their connection points, so that when we paint these up, that will be the one point that isn't painted.
So you might be wondering, why am I watching priming? That's not part of assembly. Well, technically it is. Shortly after this section, you'll see that certain things get revealed after you do the prime.
Okay, you might be wondering, why are we back here if that was the final step? Well, you see, things will become revealed. So, is this gap too much? Might just be. Things like this, see, we can see remnants of that mold line there. Do we want to push that and get rid of it? Things like that. Doing a prime job on things will reveal things that you couldn't see before. And it'll help you decide, am I going to make that a priority? Now you may remember this guy, and I said he didn't need to be sub-assembled, but it turns out he did. So, this was part of him. That's his cape back there. We forgot to attach it. But that doesn't mean that there aren't models that don't need to be sub-assembled. For example, this lady right here came in 3 pieces, and we could reach all of her. Or this fox that came in 2 halves and the head separate, and it can be painted up all together without having sub-assembly.
And that's it. Everything you need to know about assembling models. And here are the models all done up with the paint job finished.
Alright, many of you may be asking yourself, why? Why is the lore music here? And it's here because we try and be transparent. Well, that Ogren, the one with the gun, he got stuffed up during sub-assembly.
Yeah, because it was really frustrating because we just showed you how you follow all the steps that's shown in the book and do everything right.
Yeah, we actually followed the instructions from the book.
And then once you've painted everything up and we're going in to fit the model, suddenly things just didn't fit right.
And it was very frustrating.
Yeah, and then we got super glue everywhere, and it was not pretty.
Model,
Not pretty.
Yeah, well,
I worked pretty hard on that.
That was me. I ruined Sunny's paint job.
But anyhow, we just wanted to show you that even when you do everything right, you can still fail some of the times and make mistakes. And that is okay.
But the other thing is, we also made our own corrections. So we just used a bit of paper clip, and that's the rod that he's holding now.
Yeah, where it connects between the handle and the gun, as well as and then all I did after that was gone in and touched up the paint job to cover up the super glue bits.
Oh yeah, we also lost some paint to the plastic glue, and then we went to super glue. It was a disaster.
Yeah.
Especially for a video like this where you're like, hey, here's how you do things, guys. And then it's like, you know what you're going to do? You're gonna fail.
You're gonna stuff up pretty bad. But hey, that's all part of the plan. I know what I'm doing. Well, anyway, we hope you enjoyed this video on the ultimate guide to assembling models, and we hope it was helpful for you.
Oh, and the usual plugs. So if you love us, join us as a member.
Here on YouTube or on Ko-Fi.
And there's one thing that we do need you to do, which is keep those brushes wet. Bye-bye.
I can't wait for the comments where people say you don't need to wash GW sprues.
Oh, look, here's the problem, guys. GW has lied in the past, and they've lied quite recently. So the thing is, when it comes to them saying they're not using mold release, I'm sorry, I can't trust them. But the second part of it is, it's best practice in multiple ways. Like, number one, it's best practice in that you are always doing the right steps. But the second thing is motivation-wise. You do that, and then you come in and you're like, okay, all right.
You've done something to start the process, and you're less likely to leave your sprues in a corner and build your pile of shame.
Exactly. You've already started the process, and in your mind, it's already started. And that's why we think it's really good, because you can throw it back in the box, but still, you've started the process.
Yeah, and if you don't want to, wash your sprues before you start priming, that's fine, that's on you. But there's also nothing wrong with taking that extra step to remove whatever's on the model in the first place.
Well, it does mean that they'll be less likely to have the prime sticking in.
Yeah, it can happen sometimes. Like you might find that, why is it that sometimes the primer sticks and other times it doesn't? Well, that's why. Mold release. And yeah.
Well, if somebody complains about the washing part, just link them to this time code. All right, you guys have a good one. Bye-bye.